We're all going to speak for about 5 minutes or so on what made us do what we are doing, all very different at the Civil Bar. My life is a typical patchwork of coincidences and things that I never thought would pop up. I wanted to be a barrister for all, the ridiculous reasons. I'd watched telly and it looked pretty engaging. My mother told me I was good at arguing. I didn't have any contact with the law. No parents who are lawyers. I didn't know any lawyers. So it's pure whim on my part. It actually was the right thing to do, I think. Some of you, having heard me, may not think. But I pursued I went to the army after university first for 4 years, as it turned out, because I didn't know what to do. I was, useless at anything really. I got a ridiculously bad degree. And then I looked, when I was in the army, at what all my university mates were doing, and the only ones who were having a good time were the barristers. And that was it. That's what made me come to the bar. As for what to do at the bar, as we've done, this is our second time round, so people here will get bored because they're going to hear this again. I struck off all the things I didn't want to do. I literally sat down with a list. There was no pupillage book in those days, so you had to make it out for yourself. And I crossed off things I thought I wouldn't be any good at, things I thought would make me go, ugh, how awful. And by the time I'd finished, I was left with property. So I did property not because I thought what a great thing to do. In fact, I read land law. In fact, I had a land law option at bar school, and it really put me off. It was badly taught, it was really dull, it was very academic, and I thought this is just an awful thing to do, but it was the only one left on my list, so I had to do it. And actually, where I ended up in pupillage, where I am now, I just took off. I love doing it. Land law in practice is so much better than the academic study of the subject. I love the way you can see property law. You can touch it. It's all about disputes about absurd things, rights of light, about restrictive covenants, about whether a piece of land is foreshore or not, whether a road is a private road or not. And they all raise intriguing intellectual problems, as well as nutty factual problems and quite a lot of expert evidence. So basically you cover everything in my area. You get to cross-examine experts about values and about widgets. I find it terribly congenial. I'm not actually in court very much at all now. I was every day when I started, but as you get more senior in my area, I suppose in all our areas, the disputes tend to get more high value. Most sensible people don't want to litigate stuff because they're reasonable and they realize that all they're going to be doing is shelling out for people like me. So disputes tend to settle at my level, which means much less court work. I was in court last week. I'm in court next week for 7 days, which in my area is fantastically long. It's my second longest case, actually, 7 days. Somebody like Robert down the end will be doing very lengthy cases. I'd hate that, personally. I love the variety in my work. Most of my court work is half a day in court, arguing about what 3 words mean. And I find that a huge privilege. It's just wonderful that somebody will instruct you to argue about the meaning of 3 words. It's a real privilege. So that's what my work is like. I reckon I would have loved whatever I'd chosen to do, actually. I find the job is half about being competent and half about social skills. If you say to a solicitor conference in front of the client, by the way, I love the way you laid out your instructions, you've made a friend for life. And it's bizarre how many barristers have not clocked that. And you can judge how successful you are, not by how well you do in court, but by how many repeat instructions you get. And I get a fair few because, and it's not difficult, the job most people are halfway good at, but most people aren't that good at just getting on well with their fellow human beings. And if you can master that as well and show that in interview, which is pretty key, then I think you'll get to the bar and you'll do very well at it. So that's me. Over to Martina.
Thank you, Guy. My name's Martina Murphy. I'm at 12 KBW and I'm an employment and discrimination lawyer. How I got into it, well, I did a law degree because I thought that might be a sensible thing to do. Like Guy, had no connections. I had no connections in any sort of profession at all. Professional world, parents working class. I think at school, I went to a magistrate's court and I saw a female advocate stand up and do some advocacy in a criminal trial, and I thought I could do that, so it impressed me at some level, and I think it stayed with me. So I've been doing employment law and discrimination for about 20 years. What I love about employment law is probably what drew me to it originally. I thought it would be a really good mix of law and people. It's a good area if you're curious about how different worlds of work work. It's really interesting. As Guy says, I think this goes across all areas. You do, to be successful at the bar, need to be able to get on with people at all levels. I'd say particularly so with employment law. You may have to deal with the chief executive one day in one trial. Next trial, it's the most junior member of staff who's been discriminated against. So your ability to get on with people is key. I'm in court. Like Guy at the beginning, I was probably in court every day. I did a very mixed civil pupillage where I did family, property, crime, bit of everything, a little bit of crime. But I thought I might like employment law, and I had done a master's in it before I did my pupillage, which I suppose gave me that focus. And I did, despite the advice of my clerks to stay general, I said, no, I want to do employment law, and I managed to forge that for myself. But yes, I mean, it goes for all areas. You have to be really hard-working. For my area, there is a fair bit of court work. So if you'd like a paper practice, it's probably not ideal. Typically for me, I might have a week trial or a 2-week trial at least once a month. And so there's the longer the trials get, the more preparation obviously you've got to do for those. Just an example of a really satisfying case I had recently. I was acting for a claimant, disabled guy who had worked for an arm of the government, and he was treated terribly. And there was some negotiations going on. Day before trial, I arrived at court, thought it was going to settle. The other barrister didn't know what I was talking about. So we started the trial, and I cross-examined their main witness, and they managed to achieve a few key points for our case, and they settled and got a really good result for somebody who'd been treated really badly, and that was a high point for me. It was very satisfying. Those sort of cases don't come along every week, every month necessarily, but for me, all the trials and tribulations are worth it when you get a case like that and you feel like you've really made a difference to somebody. But I think I'll move on to Stephen, and my voice is going.
Thanks a lot, Martina. I'm Steve Cragg. I'm barrister at Doughty Street Chambers. I did law at King's College. I didn't like it very much. Tried to avoid being a lawyer. Did a master's degree in socio-legal studies. Found myself working at a law centre. I became a solicitor and wrote a book there on suing the police, and thought that was quite good fun. And doing that kind of work. And then I moved on to a charity called the Public Law Project, which was doing judicial review cases in new areas which hadn't been done before, travellers' law, community care, that kind of thing. Decided I'd come to the bar because I was drafting all my own paperwork, and I've been a barrister now for about 20 years. I have a practice at Doughty Street, which is one of the largest human rights sets. There's about 150 of us at Doughty Street. We do a wide range of human rights work, everything from immigration to employment, to crime, to housing, social welfare, and a fair few more as well as that. My practice is mainly judicial review, which is bringing actions against state bodies. Can be anything from local authorities and the way they provide their childcare or healthcare bodies, or government departments, police forces, and what they do with information, search warrants, that kind of thing. That usually entails quite a lot of paperwork and quite a lot of preparation for intense periods in court, often just a day or a day and a half, but often for 30 or 40 hours prep before that. I did a case in the Supreme Court last year involving abortion rights in Northern Ireland, which I think we clocked up at 150 hours preparation for 2 hours in front of the Supreme Court. So there is some court work, some areas of human rights work. There's a lot of court work. The other area I do is still do lots of actions against the police that can involve quite a lot of trial work. I think the longest I've done is 3 months trial, but often just a week or 2 weeks trial. And I think for all of us, the civil work we do, a lot of it settles before it gets to court. Human rights work is rewarding. I don't get paid, I'm sure, as much as some of these guys do, but it is rewarding if you take on a human rights case for somebody and you win it. There's nothing better than that. Fantastic feeling. Not as good when you lose, but if you win a case where you think it's worthwhile and you've done some good in the world, that's about as good as it gets, I think, working in the law. And I think I probably want to say at the moment. Happy to answer questions, but that'll do for now.
Okay. Well, hello everybody. My name is Robert Scrivener. I'm a junior tenant at Four Pump Court. I was called to the bar in July of 2013. I started pupillage in October of 2013. I went straight from university to bar school and into pupillage, so I didn't have a previous career or anything like that. And then I became a tenant in my chambers in October of 2014. So I've been in practice now for just a little over 4 years. Four Pump Court does the whole range of commercial work, though we have particular expertise in the areas of construction, shipping, energy, professional negligence, banking, IT, insurance, Profneg. I think there are probably a few other things as well, but we do the whole range. My practice in particular focuses on shipping and shipbuilding. So they are disputes all about ships of various shapes and sizes, how to get them from A to B, what happens when they crash, what happens when they collide, what happens when they sink, what happens when the cargo falls off, which happens more frequently than you would expect. I also do shipbuilding, which is unsurprisingly about how these offshore, how various offshore bits of equipment are built. I do a lot of construction and engineering related work, which is all about buildings of various description, but not just buildings, also IT projects, things like that. And I do energy related work as well, which is all about trying to find oil and gas and develop it when you do find it. The work we do in chambers is both domestic and international. Most members of chambers will get instructions from other parts of the world, so we do a lot of work in the Middle East, particularly on the construction side, so doing big infrastructure projects, stadiums, hotels, things like that. And we also do a lot of work based out of the Far East as well. So I spent a lot of last year working very closely with a Chinese law firm. In fact, this time last week I happened to be in Beijing for work. So it's a really tough life. So we do both the domestic and the international work. The thing that I really like about my job is the variety that I get to do. One day I can be working on a massive Middle Eastern infrastructure project, and the next day puzzling about banks' duties to their customers under the payment services regulations. The variety keeps it interesting. I think it makes you a better lawyer by not specialising too early. It's slightly terrifying because you're always looking at something new, but I think it's certainly never a dull moment. To be a good commercial barrister, I think it's important to realise that you're not going to be in court every single day of the week. It's not like criminal law, it's not like family law, it's not like personal injury law, where you're going to be in court a lot more often. The sort of cases that we do in chambers, for example, the construction-related work, the sums at stake are frequently in the tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, often more than that. So they're not the sort of cases which you can prepare sort of the afternoon before the hearing starts. So I think it's important to realise that you will be spending a lot of time with documents. Construction projects generate thousands upon thousands of pages of material. Somebody has to go through it with a really keen eye to detail, try to sift through everything, and work out what's relevant, what's not relevant, and how best to marshal all of this incredibly complicated material into a nice, easy to understand case which you can present to a court or tribunal. I think the other thing that is important as a commercial barrister is actually having an interest in the law. Quite often there is quite a lot of black letter law, I think, in commercial work. So, for example, in shipping, it's no coincidence that all of the leading contract cases you'll have come across are shipping cases. And I think having an interest in that is important. But what's also important is being able to apply that in a commercial and sensible way. Still the highlight of my career, and I suspect it will probably be the highlight of my career for many years to come, was appearing in the Supreme Court last year for the successful appellant on a case which was all about but-for causation in tort and whether that applies in the refinancing dispute which we were involved with. And that was a really sort of special moment in my career, because we're talking about nice, interesting legal issues, but also of real market importance to the area which we were the area in which we were working. So that's all I have to say. So I think we'll probably have questions. No?
Yeah, so there we are. We all do civil law, but we all do it in very, very different ways. Our court practices vary quite widely, and those are the sort of things you have to bear in mind. It's fantastically difficult, I remember, unless you were lucky enough to have known somebody in the law or have had a particular interest. It's very hard finding out about stuff and then manifesting that to make a successful application, convince somebody that you really do want to do their line of work. And there are various tips that we can offer you on how to manifest that interest. But it's hard, we all acknowledge, when you're starting out. I think probably the first question people have to face up is, do they want to do criminal or civil? Very, very different, although there's obviously some crossover. I always wanted to be a criminal lawyer. My burning desire was to right the world's wrongs addressing a jury, and I've never ever done that. And I feel quite sad about that, actually, and I still see that as proper barristering. And the other thing about criminal guys is they always have a huge laugh. I mean, they really do. And civil lawyers, perhaps not quite so much. I mean, there aren't many big laughs in my line of work, to be frank. But one thing that I think probably all of us will agree with is that we all love what we do, and we wouldn't swap our job for anything. I certainly wouldn't.